In this episode, we create a cute cactus character. I know what you're thinking. JV, isn't all the cactus ridges super hard to model? Well, it is, if you haven't subscribed yet. Let's get into it. Select everything and delete. Actually, you know what? I won't delete the cube. We'll keep it. It's always there for us and it's super loyal. So you can't make me delete it. And another thing. Sorry about that. Start by adding a subdivision modifier to the cube. Jump into edit mode and start adding loop cuts to mold the cube into a cactus shape. Extrude it upwards and add a few loop cuts along the way to have 3 overall rectangles. Now we can extrude the middle vertices and create its arms. Make sure to scale the points up and down to make the overall shape less perfect and more natural. With the overall shape ready, we'll now add in the eyes. Bring in a sphere with both subdivision and mirror modifiers. Once you're ready, jump into edit mode and move the sphere. With the mirror modifier active, you're going to see 2 identical spheres. That's what the mirror modifier does. I like the eyes to be slightly into each other, so I'll bring them closer together. Next, select the pupil faces and create 2 materials. One for the eyeball and one for the pupil. With the faces selected, I'll hit assign and have the pupil material applied to it. Don't worry about the shading for now, as we're going to come back to it a bit later. Next, we're going to add a mouth to our cactus character. Add a plane mesh and rotate it 90 degrees. Add a subdivision modifier to it and increase its levels to 3. Now we'll jump into edit mode and add a loop cut to form the shape. Move the vertices around so that it resembles kind of a low polygon heart shape. And then just add a material to it. Let me just bring it to the side so we can adjust it easier. There we go. Once you're happy with the shape, duplicate it and then scale it up a notch. Good. Now we can extrude it and create the lips. Select the outer faces and remove them. This will create the mouth's outer shape. We'll then select the outer vertices and extrude them inwards to form the lips. Hit L to select the lips and assign a new material to it. Great. All we need to do now is to move it closer to the teeth and shade smooth everything. Now let's bring the mouth back to its place and make our cactus happy. Now, because this cactus sees so much sunlight, it's only fair to give it a pair of sunglasses, isn't it? So let's do just that. Add in a simple plane and rotate it 90 degrees so it's facing us. Add both a subsurface and mirror modifier to the mesh. We'll jump into edit mode and move the mesh. Now we have two similar shapes again because of the mirror modifier. Start adding a few loop cuts to form the sunglasses. You can shape them however you like. I like mine to have a frame above them, so I'll duplicate the shape and remove the bottom vertices. Once you're happy with the general shape, you can start extruding them and make them more three-dimensional. You may need to reposition them to get them exactly how you like. I'll switch clipping on here so the frames can merge together. Okay, now extrude the mesh to get the temples. Remember, you can add loop cuts to model the mesh better. But try to avoid adding too many loop cuts so you don't end up with a super complicated mesh. Now some final adjustments to the glass and we're good to go. Oh, and don't forget to assign two materials for the sunglasses. One for the frames and one for the glass. Now place the sunglasses on our character and we're set. Let's move on to shading. Add a wave texture, set it to x-axis and scale it up to 10. Set distortion to 6 to make the waves more wavy and a bit more messy. Then increase the detail to 3. Remember, we're going for that natural look, so things aren't going to look perfect. Next, increase the detail roughness to 0.6 and we're good. Now we'll bring in a Musgrave's texture and add a mix shader to mix the two textures. Add a color ramp to increase the texture's contrast. Oh, and we'll set the factor to 0.35 to favor the wave texture. This way we see less of the Musgrave texture, but it's still there. Now let's bring in a gradient texture with a color ramp and add mapping to it by hitting Ctrl T. We'll rotate it in Y-axis and set it to 90 degrees. We want to set up the gradients vertically and control it with the color ramp. Now this is where it gets quite interesting. We'll mix the gradient with the textures we just created down here and set it to multiply. This way we get both the texture and the gradient mixed together. This will help us to have more control over the shader material. We'll add another color ramp to increase the overall contrast and use a mix shader to give our character some color. With the color ramp linked to the factor, we're practically giving Blender a map of where the colors should go. Let's add another color ramp and link it to roughness, so that the white color in the texture is shinier than the black color. Now I'll quickly set up the environment for our character. We'll bring in a simple plane and scale it up. Next, we'll add a sky texture and reposition the sun. With the environment lighting set up, now we get a better idea of how the cactus material is reacting with its surrounding. This looks pretty good, and we can move on to the next stage. Let's link the texture to a displacement shader. Immediately something changes, but it's only lighting. And we have to change the settings to see the actual displacement. So hit N and go to Options, Settings, and select Displacement and Bump from the drop-down menu. There we go. Now we can see the actual displacement. Let's change the color ramp roughness to a slightly grayish color to lower its contrast. And we'll also change the displacement scale to 0.3 and mid-level to 0.5. Let's also add a bump map to make the material react with the light. I'm quite happy with the cactus material, but let's adjust the shape a little to make it even cuter. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think it should look at us, so I'll rotate the eyes slightly to point it at the camera. I feel like the displacement is a little bit too much, so let's lower it down to 0.15. Great. Now let's move on to the sunglasses. Add a gradient texture with a color ramp and set the colors you like. I chose sky blue and a darker shade of blue. Add mapping by hitting Ctrl-T and changing the Z-axis rotation to -90 degrees. To make the glass material, change the transmission weight to 1 and alpha to 0.9. For the lips, we'll go with something simple. Just set roughness to 0.25 to give it a subtle shine. And onto the teeth. Add a wave texture with a color ramp. Bring the two sliders close to each other to make the lines sharper. Now scale the waves up to 1.9. We want to get this line in the center of the mouth, so scale it as you see fit. To add color, we'll bring in a mix shader and link the color to factor. Choose a white and slightly yellowish color. There. Now to make it react with the lighting, we'll add a bump map and link it to normal. This will cast a subtle shadow, which is exactly what we're looking for, and it makes the teeth look more three-dimensional. Lastly, our cactus wouldn't be a cactus without needles. To add needles, we'll apply a hair particle system, increase the number to 2500, and lower the length to 0.18. Next, we'll go to the Children panel and choose Simple. Set the display and render amount to 10. Now go to Roughness and set the size to 0.1, Random to 0.023, Size to 0.8, and Threshold to 0.1. This will make the needles more random and less clean, which is exactly what we're going for with the natural look. Lastly, we'll add another displacement and set the strength to 0.5 and mid-level to 0. Add a new texture and click on the Edit button. Change the size to 0.1, Nabla to 0.1, and Dimension to 2. Also lower the intensity to 0.1. With the distortion applied, it's always a good idea to adjust the shape again and make sure your character looks spiky good. One last thing that we should do is to make the needle's density higher at the top and less so at the bottom of the cactus. To do this, we'll add a vertex group. Switch to weight paint and draw a gradient, then invert it. Now where the red color is, we'll see more needles and less so in the blue regions. A few final adjustments and we're done with our cactus character. Now, what do you think? Let me know in the comments if you think he looks cute or a little too crazy from being under the sun for too long. To learn more about how I created the rocky desert environment, make sure to check out the time-lapse version of this episode. The project file used in this episode is also available in the descriptions below. Remember to subscribe for more project files and videos to have fun with. Keep smiling and see you in the next one.